Better like that? Yes, I can hear the feedback. All right, so thanks, Sadly, for your presentation. I just noticed that you were talking, one of the items was about identity. So this is exactly my talk about so-called self-sovereign identity, decentralized identity, however you can name it. So I'm entitling this presentation after Internet, after Bitcoin. I believe there are two revolutions, and I think the next step is self-sovereign identity. Also, as a subtitle, I will propose during this presentation to all together work on some paths to try to fix the digital identity. Okay, who I am. FX Thoorens, François-Xavier Thoorens, Fix, as mostly call me. I'm self-adobing myself as a crypto developer, but why I say that? Because I have developed a cryptocurrency called ARC and co-founded a company in France, which is a cooperative company called ARC Ecosystem, and I have been the CEO until June last year. The cryptocurrency, we have done all the classical stuff in 2016, ICO, and launching the cryptocurrency. DPoS base for people that knows a bit consensus, delegate proof of stake. And previously, I have worked as a scientific advisor for the European Commission and the Black Sea Permanent Secretariat Commission in Istanbul. And for the last year, even when I was working at ARC, I was thinking mostly at the beginning, and now working on a new way to come up with a digital sovereignty tool. Oh, sorry. So my talk will be divided in basically roughly two parts. First part is like some kind of vision, philosophy, approach of what is digital life, what is internet, what is your identity, how you work, interact with people. And second part, we try to see how failed is our identity right now, digital identity, and what's the path for successful digital identity. And lastly, I will present my new project. You will be able to try. Actually, I started with a slide. It was already done, but you can start on your mobile phone, alpha.voltis.net, to try the thing first. It's really alpha, but I will get to that later. So what is internet? How we see internet, how we feel now internet. It's some kind of freedom land, digital freedom, digital land of freedom. So at the beginning of internet, it was really this. You have lots of rules in your life, and suddenly internet appearing, and you can do a lot more that you were constrained before. Typically, you can deal drugs. That was the first transaction on internet on ARPANET. It was selling drugs and marijuana. And that's the thing, and somehow it was people feared about this, the state and everything. It was almost borderless. I come back to this later. Why almost borderless? There is anonymous, and you could mix legal, illegal activities, moral, immoral activities. Internet is not here to define moral rules or legal rules. It's just here to define interactions. So I said almost borderless. I think this is a very concept at the root of identity. I believe there are internet territories. People think that there is no border, but there is. If you go to Twitter, Facebook, social networks, Amazon, you have terms and conditions you have to respect, otherwise you're out. And you're almost dead sometimes. You can see, for instance, when you are banned on Twitter, people almost feel their part of digital life is dying. You know, it's like a cutting part of their life. You have a more famous Great Firewall. For instance, China and as well Russia are able to physically, let's say, filter transactions between their lands and outside land. Not completely, but quite enough. You have digital laws that are coming now. You know, the famous Cloud Act, infamous or famous, whatever you want today. And now, obviously, you have a different laws in Europe and everything, trying to push the classical state law inside the territories of internet. Now, for instance, GAFAM, you know that there are companies. So companies, you can locate them, and you can try to apply some laws that will hopefully reflect inside the digital land. Another example is that the famous border between banks and cryptocurrencies. For people that have cryptocurrencies, I don't know if there are many people here that have already bought Bitcoin, Ethereum, or whatever. As a company in France, we have been banned of many banks and prevented to operate. It was very difficult to be able to operate in France when you have cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies is freedom, but when you want to get back into normal life, into the state, into whatever, you feel there is a border. So that's digital territories. So I'm saying, what I'm saying is that you have to deal with border. So I'm just say I try to think about what would be a good and a bad border. And of course, you are if you have it's a food for thought. If you want to think differently, you are really open to think differently. But this is my approach. A good border is that you are asked about who you are when you enter. You have a territory, you enter, you are asked, and as soon as you get inside, you can do pretty much what you want. You have the border is just here that you are respecting some rules of the territory that are defined, but as soon as you are inside, you are reputationally, if you manage to pass the border, you can do everything. We won't ask your identity for anything you want to do in the border. And according to this definition or conception, you are a good citizen until proved otherwise. That's a famous law of you are innocent until proved otherwise. But this is very concept, I think, you can feel. What is a bad border? You are not asked, you know. The border is not really defined, so everybody can circulate. But suddenly, since everybody can mix everything, anything you do can't be anonymous. And the police could be whatever, moderator into Twitter, the police into a country or whatever, is just trying to follow you as much as possible and define laws so you are tracked for everything you do. And you are bad if you don't declare anything you do. By default, you are a bad citizen, wherever you are. So this is what I call a bad border. Interestingly, you can see, for instance, it's normal life. As soon as in our countries the border don't exist, the countries have set up passport, identification, biometry, whatever, and they are reinforcing the way to identify you and to track you. So I think this is a main question when we want to think about freedom, anonymous identification, traceability. That's the question. Is it possible to have no border and no traceability? Can we have an open system and no tracking people. As complete anarchy, as Adley has said before. Which is equivalent to me as, are humans behaving well by default if there is no term and conditions? Term and conditions can be more subtle than just GAFAM rules. I call term and conditions many things like religion, morality. You are a Christian, a Muslims, you have to perform some codes and everything, which are maybe not written, you know, but people are just feeling that you are Muslim or whatever, because you are doing what they expect you to do for any religion. People are defining with ethnicity, country, nations. They apply their own terms of condition. You know, like I don't know, some countries are more like than others or whatever. You have of course the customs. You know, the way you behave normally in life, languages. Obviously, you have many ways people are trying to identify. You know, racism, trying to apply. You know, rich people, poor people, caste, social class, everything. You know, it's not about morality. It's just the cause people apply to themselves to identify them. So, what I want to say is that digital territories, if you will speak only about digital territories, they are governed by many TSCs, the terms and conditions, which are colliding now. And we see that now, for instance, typically, free speech now is defined in many states. You know, you can't say something racist, you can say something against some people or some group of people, or you can say about religion for some countries, or you can say whatever about religion in other countries. You have these kind of rules, and obviously social networks, their term and condition is completely colliding. So it's very difficult to find out who is the boss in a social network. Is it Twitter deciding, or is it the state, whatever? You have as well different laws, European laws and US laws that are fighting for data, privacy, and everything on internet. Adobe versus what I would call internet tradition. That's really a really interesting approach. Is that Adobe was for people who are not French, was a law trying to prevent piracy, peer-to-peer download of movies or whatever in France. And the law was very rude. They could cut you off internet if you downloaded too many movies on Pirate Bay, typically. But it was never really applied. It was completely abandoned in practice because it was opposing some kind of other terms and conditions that is now really well respected, even by states, is some kind of internet tradition of freedom. And it didn't manage to defeat the internet tradition of freedom. And internet tradition is another term and conditions, to me. You have as well this famous, infamous cryptocurrencies versus KYC, AMLFT, donc Know Your Customer, anti-money laundering, and anti-terrorism financing of terrorism. I don't remember how to say in English. Basically, all the transactions, monetary transactions, are governed by rules now, where basically the states have a look into banks' transactions. They impose some rules, and obviously now you have a new cryptocurrencies world, which is completely out of the scope of classical money value transactions, and they try to to apply this, but even it doesn't work, but they try to apply the same logic, and obviously it's colliding, and there is no solution for that. By the way, it's interesting to think about why these KYC, AML rules have been defined. It's really recent. It has born with internet. Before internet, there was no KYC, AML. You were going to the bank, they were just nothing, but you were never blocked for whatever transaction or whatever. It just become mainstream because of internet, because basically capital has no border anymore, which is basically one of the main consequences of internet is that capital, the border on capital were completely removed. Imagine that capital as a border. You know, you are a company like Facebook, you make money in France, and you have to move the money to Ireland, you know, to pay less tax. But you have a border when you do that, you know. You have to say, hey, look, customs, I'm moving like several billions into Ireland. And somehow, yeah, you have to pay tax in, out, you know, that's the rules. There is no need anymore to have applied KYC, anti-money laundering, you know. You see all the flux of the flow of money circulating out in, and you don't need to apply traceability about whatever transaction and everything, and the state doesn't have to know anything about, you know, the normal French people that are not moving money to Ireland to escape whatever tax stuff or whatever, or to paradise, to tax even countries. So it's just food for thought about, you know, the problem of identify people, what they do, and the fact that there is no border anymore. So I'm coming back to digital ID, just to be sure about the time. So I talked about border. So now, what about digital ID? Okay, what's your ID on internet? How are you identified? Your mail, your phone numbers, your Visa cards. They leave you know, you are tracked with your cards or whatever. You have even cashback, you know, cashback. Somebody has cashback here. That's basically your ID being sprayed everywhere, and you get somehow paid with that. Cryptocurrencies address. You have an address, and somehow you identify, people identify you, or putting them in their contact book, so they want to pay you whatever. I put in Olvid profile. Actually, I wanted to put as well Bertie, but I haven't looked too much inside. But I think it's basically the same idea of all profile. Interestingly, Olvid profile, we come back to that. Basically, it's a public key things, which is a step further than Signal. Signal, this is your mobile phone, basically identify you. Olvid, there is no mobile phone, whatever, no email. But then it could become part of your ID. Social network. Now you are signing with Facebook or Google or Twitter. Now I'm not sure there is federated authentication for Twitter, but remember. But basically, this is you are spreading your social network, your social life, as an identification to many systems. And finally, ID card, passport, the oldest one, and now they are moving more and more. I have seen 2 days ago, France is moving out from a former project called Alicem, and now they are moving to a way to use your ID card with a chip on it, which basically have some public key and everything to be able to sign into some services. That's basically your ID, and this is very weak. You know, it's difficult to get track about what you are doing with this, and you can have several emails, of course. I have several emails, whatever. Just one thing as well. Next, actually. Phone number, mobile phone number is very interesting because this is basically the ID which is a gate to internet. If you want to get to internet at home or whatever, this is your mobile phone or your phone number, which is given by the internet provider, and which is your identification. So basically, in the internet, I have met things that you basically use many kind of different IDs, sometimes together, sometimes with other multi-factor, MFA, like 2FA, now we call that 2MFA, multi-factor authentication, which add, some kind of things that, we are sure this is you, you have this email and everything, and being able to compromise everything of your digital life is more difficult, so they want you everything. They want about you, your mobile phone, your emails, the bank. They know even they have even your passport. They have or in exchange your cryptocurrencies. Soon, there is this famous, infamous again MiCA law in Europe. So they want to track your cryptocurrencies address as well as a way to identify you. And everything is used to be able to access to any kind of services on internet. Banks, messaging, social networks, state services, access to your company. If you're working in a company, you are given an access as well. Peer-to-peer relationship. So in this, where does fit this Olvid profile and cryptocurrencies address? It's kind of independent. Okay, you have now MetaMask and alternatives that are using your address, your itinerary address, to be able to log in to some systems. But this is the very beginning. But in the end, the question is it really your ID? Is it something you really own? Is it something that is really you? You feel this is you. And the thing is that most of the time, mobile numbers, authenticator, emails, passports, they are given by corporate, states, banks, and this is basically they own your ID. This is they are providing your access to internet. They are providing access to services. For instance, if you are banned for Google or Twitter, you are being removed part of your activities or services into the internet. So basically, it's and moreover, if you want to compromise an ID of some people, to a pirate, a hacker is going to compromise ID of people to perform actions in your name, illegal actions. They're not going to hack somewhere here. Basically, they are hacking the ID provider, whoever it is. They are going to hack emails, all the security made by your ID provider, and they get access to tons of passwords, tons of whatever activities, all your data, whatever, because basically you don't own your ID. Just here I put PGP, because PGP was the first interesting try. I will come back to later to identify people, but it has been basically too much linked to privacy and emails, and it was dead as soon as PGP decided to identify PGP key with emails. But yeah. So in the next slides, I will propose a few misunderstanding of what is your ID, which I believe are failed concepts and leading to the wrong choice in terms of products or in terms of the way you identify on internet. The first is, I think the most subtle and biggest fail was mixing identification and privacy. I think that when you want to identify, your first objective is not to have your data private. This is different concepts, and the interesting thing is that people don't. The interesting consequences is that we are all the products like PGP is a very typical failed product because we moved from identification, which is basically public key, private key signature, to privacy, which is encryption, decryption. And there are two different concepts, and we moved to say, okay, this is you because the channel is secure, because this is encrypted, so this is you. But it's not really that. I mean, it's the data is only provided by you, maybe, but it's not sure. You know, it's not sure it is you. It's not the same concept. So, and the same way is that, in the same idea is that, okay, you see on internet you have this little lock, HTTPS, so the channel is secured. The data transferred to Facebook, for instance, is secure. So everybody on Facebook, on this site I look at, I interact with, are fully identified, which is not true. Maybe yes, but it's completely different concept. So I think that prevents us to provide real digital products that are not weak, and the way we are making assumption to who we are talking to or transacting to or interacting to is too much mixed with the fact that the channel is secure or not. Sorry. I don't know if you have been to this Breaking Bitcoin conference. It was like maybe 5 years ago, 3. And there was a very interesting thing. If you want to identify Udi Watermeyer, I don't know if you know him. He's big. He's a guy quite well known on the cryptocurrency space, and he has made a presentation a few years ago about breaking Wasabi, which is a wallet for Bitcoin. And at the presentation, he just show his PGP key, and suddenly, after the next presentation, he just realized it was a wrong PGP key because he made a mistake with a B here, which is a knight. That's very funny. So he went after the next presentation to correct it, and I was thinking, I mean, how strong can you identify people where you have modern tools, to exchange, to certify, you have the right key or whatever, above all with Bitcoin and all this technology, and we are still trying to identify by copy-pasting, not really well copy-pasting, some kind of fingerprint of PGP keys. I think that shows a bit the failed concept of web of trust, which is basically the concept of PGP, is that you could exchange keys and make sure after the key exchange you have a web of people, of keys, where you can interact with, and you are sure the guy is the right guy. Actually, he disappeared because of the email, because now people are linking to email, your PGP ID to emails. So, talking about that, what would be a self-sovereign ID? I'm taking back this. Okay, no, just next slide. So for me, it's about proving that one is the same person over time. You are proving you are the same person over time. That's ID. I will define relationship later. ID. So what is basically this is that proving is just like asymmetric cryptography, public keys, private keys, like we have seen in Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. That you are the same person. This is where I think enter in play web of trust or territories, digital territories. Over time, is that you are managing some kind of life cycle of your ID. Backups. We have the revocation certificate concept in 2PGP. In case your ID has been compromised. So you have to deal with some kind of life cycle of your ID. If you take the schema I've done before, that would be this kind of thing. Self-on ID, SSID, I call that SSID, is basically your entry point for any services on internet. And everything else around is just optional MFA. Why optional? I mean, you could basically do whatever with your ID, just signing, performing a signature into interaction login with the service. But obviously, banks are subject to laws, so maybe they need your passport at some point. Social networks, they have some laws, so they need maybe emails, passport as well, mobile numbers, whatever. But this is optional. As soon as you have something that is yours, then after all the things will become optional to identify you. So SSID should be, as an open protocol. Open because everybody should, in the sense of standard, open, free, standard, whatever protocol that builds web of trust. So you are building your network of people using IDs, and presenting interfaces with services on the internet. You are able to use your ID to connect to whatever services already existing right now. It is basically what I'm working on for the last 2 years. I have built cryptocurrencies called ARC, and it was back in 2016. And quite after the launch, we started up with, we built a team of developers and everything, and I became a CEO, so less developing, managing more the shit storm with administration and anything else. And I was thinking about all these kind of things and how to build a product that answers this kind of self-sovereign ID. And now I've left ARC in June last year. I've been more heavily working on it, and now I have basically a new product that is in alpha stage. I just present you. I don't know if there is a sound out. I don't think so, but if you go on the website Voltis.
A place without borders, anonymous, a place of freedom and sharing. This space has positive aspects, but also negative aspects, tensions, and threats that can occur from all sides. It has become an economic but also a major geopolitical stake made of power rivalries between protagonists, a formidable weapon in geopolitical antagonisms. Conflicts for cyberspace or in cyberspace cannot be dissociated from classic geopolitical power rivalries. Ransomware, spying, supply chain attack, phishing attack, cloud, 5G, IoT, crypto, deepfake are thus the daily lives of many organizations and force us to ask ourselves more widely about digital sovereignty, the place of GAFAM, the ethical legitimacy of social credit, and more broadly, of the health pass as well as issues related to traceability. The arrival of Web 3.0 has a multiplicative effect on the phenomenon. While the costs are estimated in billions of dollars, hackers are always one step ahead. What is at stake goes beyond simple material damage, but raises the question of digital governance and even world peace. Today, companies and organizations have a new, stronger, more resilient and innovative ally, Voltis, a unique project that combines the best of crypto security by proposing a revolutionary identification process based on its network of trust, the basis for our own digital sovereignty. Times are changing, and Voltis is leading the way to a new web of trust. Voltis.
Okay, so I'm just defining a bit Voltis. I'm introducing some kind of new way. If you have seen the PGP before, you know, you are just copy-pasting your fingerprint. I'm taking a bit further. I'm defining some kind of certificates, different certificates, but the main one is a relationship certificates where basically you are handshaking IDs together. So IDs basically are sets of public keys. I won't go into details for this, but just say it is a public key, like your address for cryptocurrencies or whatever. And basically, I'm defining protocol to be able to handshake. It's very classical in the end because it's very similar to FIDO2. I don't know if people know FIDO2 or people have used this kind of YubiKey or whatever. It's basically the same concept, but on a peer-to-peer aspect. I think I have a couple of FIDO2 keys here. So that's basically improving PGP with this kind of certificate, PGP Web of Trust. You can try it already. It's alpha, so alpha voltis.net. I will come a bit later on this. Just checking over time. So, just to give you a broad, I'm currently writing the white paper, but just to give you a bit the cloud of technology stack of what's inside. I'm leveraging a lot about BIP43, which is a Bitcoin improvement proposal. So you are able to derive key from a seed key. So the seed key is some kind of private key, master private key, and then after you are deriving different addresses, Bitcoin, one per transaction. And I'm taking this concept to be able to derive whatever number of IDs. You can get anonymous IDs, public IDs, friendship IDs, one-time ID you use only once, all these kind of things. As I said before, I'm using FIDO2, I don't know how to say in English, but it's already compatible. If you have your FIDO2 card or key or YubiKey, whatever, you can already create your ID using this. But actually, it's an extension of FIDO2, so you won't be able to use all the capacities of the Voltis protocol with only FIDO2. So I'm working to have hardware applications that are more Voltis compatible. It's using WebRTC over PGS to communicate, or in peer-to-peer. Right now, it's using peer.js to broke your connection, but I'm planning to use WebTorrent DHT. Actually, it's another DHT, but it's very similar to WebTorrent DHT. It's called Hyper Protocol, which are made by the same people of WebTorrent. But they are doing some things that is more interesting. The interesting thing is that your ID will be able to derive the key that identified you in the DHT, the peer-to-peer protocol. So your ID will be already inside the protocol as well. There is a problem with revocation certificate. I won't go into details unless you ask questions, but peer-to-peer I mean, PGP has a problem with revocation per certificate. In my case, you will be able to revocate and in the revocation submit your own ID without the risk of being compromised, which is not the case of peer-to-peer. So I'm working on patenting it, not to be paid some fees, but more to prevent from being troll patent by other company. Right now it's using Jitsi to be able to make some kind of call, video call between people using Voltis. Noise protocol, again, noise protocols, they are using different set of keys, ID key, which is not really your ID, but still is called ID key, and device key. All of them can be derived from your identity Voltis, so it's really well fit for this. Noise protocol, for people who don't know, is a protocol developed by the Signal messenger, Signal. Moxie has developed this protocol, and this is used in WhatsApp, it is used in other messenger. Olvid is similar. Bertie, I'm not sure you are using this, but this is one. Okay, so here I believe this is the first FIDO2 authentication for peer-to-peer. If you see the specification of FIDO2, it's to authenticate you with the server, with Facebook or whatever. And now you can use FIDO2, your same key, to identify you on peer-to-peer, like building your web of trust. Planning to make the Ledger app. I'm waiting for something from some inputs from Ledger. So if you can press them to to make open source their upcoming FIDO2 application, it would be nice. Organization group certificates. I won't talk about it today, but this is another way to create territories, what I call territories or web of trust, our organization or group certificates or clubs. IoT ready, the specification use algorithms that are really easily implemented in IoT or using chips, secure element or whatever. In the application, you can sign the documents, and everything is encrypted by default. If we have time, we can make a quick demo. So here is typically this. So I have already created. I hope I have so many keys. I don't remember which key I'm using. But I think this is this one. Okay. So I'm just using again a FIDO2 key to be able to log in. You can. This is basically my contact, where I can directly call the contact. I think it's on my phone, but I don't remember. But anyway, I'm using GST and you can video call using the encryption made by your ID. You can sign documents. So again, if you sign a document, whatever, it will ask your FIDO2. So it's basically FIDO2 signing your documents, which is, I think, nobody is doing it yet, but I think it's a very innovative way of using FIDO2. And of course, you can verify the document by rehashing it, basically, and verifying the signature, and to be able to be sure that the signer has already signed the document. So there, and of course it's transferable, which is not really easily done by with FIDO2, but you can transfer to any device. So basically, you can just I think this is this, and you can transfer to device, and basically this is a bridge. A peer-to-peer connection that is able to transfer all your ID to another device And you can reuse after the same key on another device and everything, and transfer your ID to be able to do that. And of course, you have the capability to log in. So I think this is this. I have another ID, for instance, here. If I want to sign in, actually, I have made some kind of MetaMask-like capabilities, you know, to use an extension on your browser. And of course, if you sign in using, you can basically decide to sign, have the history of all your login to different systems, revoke them if you want, and then after you get to the site and they identify you with a signature, whatever. That's basically the concept of IDs. And after, of course, we have to build services on top of that, which is another problem, maybe another conference one day, about how this kind of self-sovereign ID can enter in the society, which is a new social way of recognizing each other, and is far from easy to be able to move from the old concept. Google is giving me the ID with my email. I have a password, and I'm connecting to whatever. Now it's a concept, or you create your ID, like I have done. I don't have password or whatever, and then after I'm connecting to other people or to other services without password, without way of being compromised or whatever. So you have the same problem between cryptocurrencies and normal bank accounts. People are not getting used easily to use cryptocurrencies because they don't work to the same way as a bank account, and this is exactly the same problem with identity. So an ID doesn't work the same as your classical digital ID. Anyway, back to this. So I don't know if you have questions about it. I think I'm mostly on time, yes. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Hi.
Or clap.
Nice talk, a nice product. It seems that you have there. I have some questions about, is all of this open source? Because I think I really want to know what is the code that is running my identity, I think. And the part of that, where is my identity stored in all of that systems? Okay, you have the FIDO key, but if I don't have a FIDO key and I want to create a new identity, where is it stored?
Yeah, so good questions. First question, open source. It's not yet open source because it's not really clear. I would like to finish the white paper before to open source it. So, okay, it's still a work in progress, but it will be open source rather sooner than later. Second question, where is your ID? Okay, ideally, so I'm raising the concept of cryptocurrencies. Your key, your ID, or not your key, not your coin. I'm using, say, your key, your ID. So basically, FIDO2, you have only half of your ID stored here, which is a FIDO2 key, and there is another half which is stored on computer right now. This is why I want to. The next step is to develop a special hardware on secure element, which is a fully implementing Voltis directly on hardware. So everything would be on the key, and ideally as well your web of trust. So you can have some small storage, and to be able to have everything which is web of trust plus your ID, which is, I believe, a way to identify you is the relationship you have on your key. So in the demonstration right now, there is no server. So all the, if you go on alpha.voltis here, of course the source files is downloaded from a server, but then after there is no interaction with a server. Everything is stored on your browser. So, but ideally it will be everything on the hardware. and backed up the same way as the cryptocurrencies and all these kind of things, if you are dealing with cryptocurrencies and security.
All right.
Yes?
Okay. Test. Okay. So thank you for the talk. So will you be compatible with W3C DID specification? And if yes, will you try to be interoperable with other GID methods?
Yes, that's a very good question because this is still an ongoing question. I have partially implemented W3C DID called, I don't remember the name, but anyway. The problem is that my view of WC3ID is like big consortium are used to the classical ID, your email, whatever. Now, cryptocurrencies have become a thing, and they try to ingest the decentralized ID of cryptocurrencies into the whole system of identification, and it's never fitting really my needs, and obliged to make, because I am double signatures for peer-to-peer certification, which is not in the W3C DID. I don't remember the name, but there is a name for that. So I'm extending the same way as Philo2. I'm extending the protocol or the thing. So I take the liberty to really build freely to be able to have something secure and fitting the vision. And then after, I think that the WC3D, if my thing works, I mean, everybody will try to will use it, and W3C DID will follow in specification. So it's more building first, and then after standardizing second.
Hello. I have a really basic question, so sorry if I didn't understand something, but if, for example, we had in MetaMask the option to chat with one another, what would be the difference from our wallet address and, for example, the Voltis ID? Yes.
Yes, it's not you understood correctly. Actually, yes, it's similar. There are two things in MetaMask I didn't like. That's why I think it's better to have something separate. First, it's tooling to cryptocurrencies, and I believe ID should be something really independent, not to link. And as well, there is no blockchain concept in my things. I think this is a wrong way to go. Many products like Ion, like for decentralized ID, there is Ion made by Microsoft. There is there is Anima that has been launched by Florian Le Goff 2 weeks ago at Paris Blockchain Week. And I think it's a wrong way to go. Is to use blockchain, and I think there is no blockchain in my things. I want to build something really independently of blockchain. But maybe it will work MetaMask better than me. I mean, we are a competitor in this case for ID.
Maybe we have the time for another question if there is one. No, you good?
Okay. Some more. I think it's technical questions, but so I have my digital identity, right? And I want to send data to some service to provide my identity, right? Some bits of my identity. Should I send my data to them, or should I send a proof to them
Ah,
about that data?
yeah, and you are moving slowly to zero knowledge proof, right?
Yeah, yes. Because
Okay.
just a bit of context, there are some identity projects that are being written right now that they work around zero knowledge proofs. Yeah.
Exactly. I have, let's say, not a complete answer on this, but two ideas. First idea is that your question is mixing what I don't want to mix is identification and privacy. And privacy is not the same as ID. So I want to focus on ID. So I leaving this case of if services want more of my privacy, it's their problem, it's not mine. So they will deal whatever they want. They will use Voltis if they want. But anyway, that's first. Secondly, there is the zero knowledge proof. So I could include, for instance, some algorithm using zero knowledge proof. But I think that zero knowledge proof is very bad fit for privacy because zero knowledge proof is a protocol where basically you are proving to somebody something, and a third guy is looking at it, is validating without knowing, which is not really the model of privacy. Privacy is that you are sending data to some people because they want to know more, and you don't want to have, that this guy is using this data for something else or being hacked, and this data is going on the internet, which is really different. Use case, I think, than ZKP. But maybe I'm wrong, but this is basically how I see things like that.
I think you're good. Thank you so much for your talk.
Thanks a lot, and see you next. If you have questions after, I can be.